Okay, good evening, everybody. So, welcome to the 2022 Supporters Trust Election Hustings. For those of you who don't know me, this is for the attendees as well as the panelists. I'm sure you've all been exchanging emails with me. I'm Phil Burden, I'm the Trust Secretary, and I'm responsible for organising both the election and the AGM. Firstly, I'd start by thanking all the candidates for seeking an election to the Trust Board, because without candidates and people on the Trust Board, it just can't function. So it's really important. So thanks a lot for giving up your time and considering this. For those watching, there are manifestos of all the candidates on our website, and they've answered questions which have already been submitted. I've had some candidate questions in advance, which I'm going to use some of them. Feel free to use the chat facility on Zoom to ask other questions. We are recording this session, so it will be uploaded onto the Trust YouTube channel, so that anybody who can't attend tonight can look at it and go from there. I'm going to start by asking all the candidates who are here to give a very brief introduction, and I'll start in no particular order, just on the order of what they're on, how they are displayed on my screen. Ian, if you'd like to go first, you happen to be at top left.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Ian Lowman, and I've been a fan for 35 years. I'm a big bank season ticket holder. I own a small business with my wife, a HR software company, and I'm also a mental health counsellor.
Thank you. Jamie, you're next.
Hello. As it says there, my name's Jamie Pelmear. I unfortunately haven't been a fan for 35 years, but hopefully it's kind of obvious why. I'm a big bag season ticket holder as well. Started when I was 11, kind of in and out since then. Definitely got the bug. My background is I'm actually a chartered accountant, so I was there as a school leaver, so I've been doing that for over 10 years now, and really just looking to apply that knowledge and insight into ensuring a smooth kind of running of the trust and therefore the club.
Paul, you're next.
Evening, everybody. Yes, I'm a big bank season ticket holder as well, supporter 30 plus years, very passionate City fan, do a lot with my working environment as well, with sponsorship and stuff. Had 3 years previously on the Trust Board, stood down after those 3 years due to other commitments, and I feel I'm at the right stage now where I can give that kind of commitment again, so I'm very keen to be involved again.
Matthew, you're next.
Hi, my name's Matthew. I live in East Devon. Moved back to the area about 8 years ago. Previously was a member for the GWGs up in Bristol, travelling down to watch most of the matches, which are a great bunch of people. I work in recruitment at the moment. What I think I could bring to the business is a bit of really putting ideas out there and following them through. I've helped with the Corporate Trust football tournament, and there's a few other ideas I want to bring to the table as well. Thank you.
Stephen?
I'm Stephen Chown. I've been a supporter ever since I knew there was a thing called Exeter City. That was probably about 50 years ago. I am currently a chief executive of Exeter Community Initiatives, which is the Trust charity partner. I am interested in joining the Trust, kind of want to give something back to the Trust after that length of support. And I'm really interested in kind of governance and financial matters and kind of the ethical stance of the Trust.
Will?
Thank you, Phil. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Will Barrett. In my day-to-day role, I'm the head of charity development for our club community organisation, the Exeter City Community Trust. And I've been a trustee since 2019, where I was fortunate, I'd say, or grateful to be elected to the Trust Board after 30 years of fandom. I've participated in the finance and governance group, the community group and the comms group, which I led for a season or so. In my previous roles, I've worked as an external partner with the club whilst at the university, where I collaborated with colleagues to found the Grecian Archive and ECFC Museum. I've also worked for the club as programme editor. In my new role, I feel I'm uniquely placed to understand many mechanics of our supporter-owned football club. So very keen to continue the work of the last few years for the next 3 years.
Clive.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Clive Harrison. I guess I might be the least longest supporter of Exeter City, having only moved to Exeter about 10 years ago and been involved with the club as a volunteer for 9 of those years with junior Grecians to start with. I have sat on the Trust Board for 6 years and very honoured to represent the Trust Board on the club board for the last 4 years. So that's me.
Thank you, Richard. So last but not least.
Hi everybody, my name's Richard Knight. I'm a former bank manager, so I've got plenty of governance and finance experience to bring to the table. I've also been a facilities manager, so I've got lots of premises experience. I've been supporting liaison officer for goodness knows how many years. I'm a Selco season ticket holder. I've been a supporter since the age of 12. I've filled every role at the club, from catering. Well, the only roles I haven't fulfilled are a director and a player. And I've been on the Trust Board since 2019. So I've seen us through COVID. And I'm secretary to the CCT, City Community Trust, Museum, and the Women's Football Team.
Thanks, Richard. I've had an late email from Alistair Yates, which I'm going to read because he asked me to read out a statement. So he says, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting. It's the first trust session for almost 2 years. I'm absolutely gutted. I also missed the match in Plymouth, my first derby day missed in 35 years. I have answered the questions. I have also released a podcast prior to the event. I will answer any questions raised tonight via an open podcast once I am capable. Well done to those standing. I look forward to seeing you at the meeting this year and hope moving the trust forward. We need to develop the trust and it needs new blood. I hope to be match fit for the AGM. I humbly ask for your vote and hope you understand. Kind regards, up the city, Al. I'm also aware that they're not quite sure how to fix it, that the chat facility appears to be disabled. So I will start with a question that I've got while I try and figure out how to enable the chat facility. Right, so here's a question. What do you what the question is, what do you think is the biggest disadvantage of trust ownership model, and what do you consider is the biggest advantage? I'm going to start with one of the trustees because that seems a good one to start with. So sorry, Will, you get to go first on that one.
That's very kind. Thank you. It's a big question. It's a very good question. When we're looking at the disadvantages of the trust model, I think that where people's minds will go initially would be finances. We operate in a very crazy and uneven business in football. And obviously we have no wealthy owner to jump in and save the day. But in that, the great strength of supporter ownership comes in. It's a collective ownership. It's collective responsibility. I'm minded of, and I'll try not to dip too much into the museum for points of reference, but obviously having studied the football club in great depth, I always think about the first 100 years versus the last 20 years. And I think the Supporters Trust adventure has achieved so much more than we managed to do in a period 5 times longer than the length of our ownership of the club, which of course we celebrate 20 years of ownership this year and next season, which is really exciting. So there's still a long road to go with that. Yeah. And I think one of the advantages, and I think we get stronger and stronger with it, we saw how that we combined through COVID. We saw how the long-term planning through the academy and the community model paid dividends with players like Ollie Watkins and hopefully in the future Ethan Ampadu and others in between. But by working together, being collective, understanding what we want as a community-owned football club is a great strength. So that's something that I enjoy being a part of and look forward to contributing more to in the future.
Thank you. Matthew, I'll go with you next.
Thank you. I probably Will gave probably the best answer you could probably ask for in that. He covered everything. I think, like you said, the disadvantage of it is, we're competing against the bigger clubs in Division 1 at the moment, the League 1 leaders of Derby County, the Sheffield Wednesdays of the world, which are probably 4, maybe 5 times our budget at the moment, which is but I think we've developing the talent through the academy. I think that we actually prove that we can bring through the £1 million players like we've done with the Grinds, with the Watkins and the Ampadu's of the world. I think that's the main thing that the advantage for us is it's got that feel that everyone's working and pulling in the right direction. I think before you see other clubs and they're all disjointed, and I think it is one big family down at the Trust and within the club.
Steve, go have a go yourself. Sorry, this one it may run out of legs because it's so complicated. But
well, in terms of the question, I mean, clearly Will and Matthew have kind of covered the main points. I mean, obviously, there's always an issue to do with finance and competition with other clubs. But I think the last 20 years has been a kind of almost like a revelation in terms of the stability that the Trust has actually brought. And I think it's also brought quite a lot of goodwill in terms of the supporters base, the fact that it is democratically owned, the fact that there are 10 people standing for this election, I think is a credit to the club and to the enthusiasm for the Trust. And I think that was kind of exemplified for me through COVID, when we were asked, did we want to surrender our season tickets, for instance. Most people said, get a refund. Most people said, no, we're going to donate it to the club. Now, if we'd been owned by an individual owner, I'm not quite sure we'd have had the same amount of goodwill from the supporters. And I think that's a really, really key point. And I think that kind of guarantees the success of the club in the long term. So although we might not necessarily be able to compete at the very highest level, we are a very stable, progressive club in terms of the academy, in terms of the development of the club. And I think that that's based on the goodwill of the Trust, and I think that's something that should be supported. And next year, 20 years of ownership should be celebrated.
Okay, Clive, go for it.
Yeah, I guess we've had most of the answers there, but the disadvantage of being finance is obviously a double-edged sword, because it stops us from spending money that we don't have. So while success might come from evolution instead of revolution, we have to be steady in what we do. I think that's the discipline. The democracy involved with the Trust is fantastic. It's allowed all of us, for instance, this evening to stand for election to the Trust Board and to represent our 3,500 members. Is a fantastic thing to be involved in. So although it starts with that disadvantage that things might not be quick, we haven't got anybody to throw millions in here or there unless we develop those players at the academy ourselves. I certainly think that finance disadvantage can be turned into a big advantage.
Okay. Ian.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, most of it's been covered already, but I suppose a disadvantage is you can talk about boom and bust, and with bust you do get boom. So you could ask a Yeovil fan, for instance, how enjoyable was that one season in the Championship when they got there, and then obviously they did bust, and now they're back in the National League. So there is that. I think the best thing I could say about the club being supporters owned is that how you want your club, or how you imagine your club you would like it to be, you can make it that way, purely by this evening here, attending this meeting, standing for the Trust Board. If you have such a strong view, you can actually get that point across to everybody else, and hopefully maybe change other people's opinions.
Jamie, go for it. I'm going to go once through with all of these questions just so that everybody has a fair chance.
Yeah, thanks. It's starting to get to the narrow end of what we.
I realise. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I think just building on what others have sort of said, really, it's I think we've all kind of narrowed down on what one clear sort of disadvantage is, but I think really that is quite circular. I think it necessitates it becoming one of the strongest advantages in terms of focusing us on what's actually important, and like you say, through the use of the trust itself, ensuring that proper governance has to be put in place, not because it's nice to, but because it has to. And also, I think, you only got to look at your friends down the road who play with a slightly odd shaped ball. When they put on a different, a B team game, the outcry of wanting refunds, coming back to the point that Steve made earlier, it's, I think there's a very different mindset in this trust owned club. So I think, yeah.
Thanks. For those who are attending, as far as I'm told, the chat facility should be working now. So if you want to try and chat, send us a picture or two, send us a question or two. Feel free. Welcome, Mick.
Hi. So a bit late. I do apologise.
It's all right. You didn't hear the question, so I'll at least give you a chance to hear the question. So the question was, what do you think is the biggest disadvantage of trust ownership, and what do you think is the biggest advantage? I'm going to answer a couple of the other guys to give you a chance to work out what the question, to think about your answer. Paul, I don't think I've asked you yet.
No. I'd echo what everyone's been saying. The fact we haven't got a big owner that's going to chuck a lot of money in it, suddenly you need it to finance things, that's the major disadvantage. But I think we see that as an advantage as well, because we run a real sustainable model, making sure the money's spent in wisely along the way. And I think everyone buys into that model and slowly growing the club, which we have been doing. And the democracy that comes with trust ownership, even going back to when it was voted to serve notice on Paul Tisdale's contract all those years ago, obviously led to one of the strong positions that we're in today. So that just shows democracy of every fan really in the trust has a say. I think that's one of the best things that we can always talk about to other clubs, how it really does work in every way for us. So yeah, I think that's a big plus.
Okay, Richard, I haven't asked you yet, and then I'll come to you, Mick.
Thank you.
I'll be quick, Mick. So
no, that's absolutely
you won't be waiting too long.
Yeah.
The biggest advantage is obviously democracy, the collective, and fan involvement. Trust enables stable and sustainable progress. Those are the big things, and it's ensured that what progress we have made, it sticks. It's not boom and bust. It's just consistent. And the disadvantage, progress has been slow. And it's down to having no wealthy owner, but the trust has consistently put money into the club. Democracy can slow things down, like deciding what should be in the refreshment huts. There are 1,001 people who've got very different aspects on what should be in the refreshment huts, and it's like doing a cliff. Do we do it or don't we do it? It's not a boardroom decision. It went out to the members.
Okay, well, Mick, sorry, you last. It's always often hardest to ask the last answer. I'm going to run through.
Sure. Well, I couldn't agree more with what everyone has just said. I think the disadvantage is basically we haven't got a person that has lots of money or pot of money to actually invest in the club. But then I think that's a slight advantage in thinking and saying that because it's a supporters trust owned club, it makes it better that way. So the advantage is that the money is still being given to the club by us, they supported, which is fantastic. And hopefully it will continue to be so for a long time.
Thanks, Mick. Yeah. I've got a good one. Again, came from the same person, and it's something that the current Trust Board has struggled with for a while. Is that what would you do to encourage? The question is, what would you do to encourage more season ticket holders to become trust members? Because it's something like about between 40 and 50% of season ticket holders are not trust members. Paul, start with you.
That is a difficult one. It's been a long-standing problem. Why do they not join the trust? And it's often talked about putting incentives and stuff, making them want to be members of the trust. It's a very, very difficult one because some of them just think by having a season ticket, that's my contribution to the club. I think all we can do really is keep on selling the message and what the trust, what you can achieve by increasing membership and making them feel more valuable and more part of it, and trying to sell the virtues of that to them. Very difficult because we can't really do discounts and things like that. So I think we've just got to keep on banging the message home. Certainly, every time renewals go out, perhaps sell the virtues of what's gone on in the past year with the trust, what's been achieved that they may not be aware of. I think just getting the message over as strong as we can every year when renewals come up.
Thanks. Stephen.
I'm the first one tonight to say I'm stuck on mute. Yeah, I'd be quite interested to kind of analyse kind of the demographic of that season ticket holder and the renewal type pattern longer term. But I also think, you know, it is around kind of promoting the values of the trust and the virtues. And I think we kind of need to be slightly cautious in the sense that, you know, it is if you buy a season ticket, that's quite a major investment. And I think at the moment, you know, we're kind of in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and if we kind of push too hard and say season ticket holders should become trust members, I think that sends out the wrong kind of message. So I think there's something around kind of, you know, selling the virtue of what the trust can actually offer, but actually doing some sort of longer term analysis of kind of what the demographic is of the support the season ticket holders, and kind of whether it's a younger and older demographic, and kind of doing some sort of survey around some of that in the longer term. But as I say, at the moment, it's quite a difficult ask to say to season ticket holders who are shelling out over 300 quid in a time of economic crisis to say, well, you need to shell out some more money. So I think there's a fine balance to be kept on that point. But I think that we need to obviously sell the virtues of trust ownership to those season ticket holders. So I agree with Paul.
Clive, do you want to go with this?
Yes, thanks. Well, I'm pleased to say that there are things going on now, and the club is becoming more and more involved in driving trust memberships as well as anything. So there's things to come in the future regarding that. I think demographics is a good point. I would venture that a large number of the non-trust members are young. There are some diehards out there who we've still yet to convince. But of course, pointing out the youngsters just leads us to the other issue of that we face as a trust is getting those people engaged from when they leave the junior Grecians at 16 until about 23, and there has been no solution to that over the years, and various things have been tried, and we just have to keep reaching out to them, I think, and that then will, together with the very reasonably priced junior season tickets, and certainly the 16 to or the 18 to 23 ticket we have now, will really come together and give a really good package for them. So as I would say, watch this space, but of course, you know, getting those youngsters involved is really key.
Mick, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yes, absolutely. Excuse me. It's a difficult one, really, because don't forget, right now, people haven't got that much money to actually spend due to the that energy crisis and what have you. So finding extra money right now from everyone is proving quite difficult. Although it's nice to say that the actual season ticket sales have risen by, I believe, 30%. So that's something. But I think to ask season ticket holders to become trust members, that could be a difficult one. I think it should be a matter of personal choice. But I think that you can have a real sale, or at least try and have a say and make a difference by becoming a trust member. So I think the question lies in a matter of personal choice as to whether they want to become trust members or not.
Ian, do you want to go with that one? Thank you.
Yeah, I think maybe sort of, as other people have alluded to, hammering home the media message. The the club's media team do a fantastic job with Twitter and Instagram and all the other social media aspects. I wondered if the trust could piggyback on that perhaps, and sort of maybe a bit of transparency as well, where your money goes, what it actually goes towards, and what different initiatives the trust is involved, and also emphasizing those priorities. Like for some people, especially younger supporters, priority tickets would probably be a big thing, priority for big away games, cup games, things like that. And yes, it is true that we're in financial dire straits at the moment, but the monthly membership, the monthly fee has only been £2 a month ever since inception. So I think that's really good value for money. I think basically it's just hammering the message home constantly and just eventually trying to get through to these people.
Richard?
Thanks, Phil. I was just checking to see that I was on. Yes, I am on. I think priority ticketing for away games is something that we can definitely promote to season ticket holders. They seem to be relying on their mates at the moment to get them tickets, which is not really the game. We need to sell the benefits and particularly the achievements of the trust over the last 20 years. And I think there's an emotional tie here as well. You're a supporter, so why don't you become a member of your club? And then finally, engaging with supporters.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
I think I'd probably ask most of the people who are not signing up for the trust the reason why, really. Sometimes it might be a case of some person might not have a computer to sign up. Again, I think someone said that the gap between 18 and 23-year-olds, actually, what's the reasoning behind them not signing up, really? If we can work out why they're not signing up, and I think people said the interaction, but we, like you said, the incentives of getting tickets, priority bookings for away matches. I just think we probably just need to go out a little bit more, have a chat with these people. I think the trusts usually have a store outside the club shop, but actually, if we work out that most of the people are season ticket in the big bank, why didn't we ask one Saturday, go and ask these people, the reasoning behind it? At least then we can come back to people, and if they want to have a few more, I guess, incentives, we can look at those if they're not costing the club anything, but we can look at the reasoning behind why they're not signing up, really. And for older people, for someone who might not want to use a computer, then we can also obviously sign them up online at the club shop or at some point in the club.
Thanks. Will?
Thank you, Phil. I'll try not to be too much of an echo chamber. Certainly agree with what Paul was saying around messaging. That continues to be key. I think showing people the value of that investment, whether it be tangible or intangible, is helpful on that front. As Matthew said, communication, engaging with these people. I say these people, but they are supporters like trust members are supporters. So coming back to the other point that Stephen made about respecting that choice, understanding we're in a cost of living crisis, and just going through that process intently with the messaging and the communication. I think for a long time, Ian noted about piggybacking on the great work of the club's media team. I was fortunate, blessed to be part of that group for a period of time. And even within that, always felt want to see more from the club, understanding that supporter ownership is, in essence, one of our key USPs. So that unique selling point, we can never be Man United, not that we'd want to be, or any of the other great clubs in the world, but the way we measure our success at Exeter City is completely different. So I think understanding we could be the best supporter-owned football club in the country, bolster that reputation that we have inside of football, and to do that collectively, I know those kind of intangible points. So within it, I'll just finish with more communication, better engagement, and better selling of the tangible and intangible value of that investment from supporters.
Thanks, Phil. Sorry, Jamie, you get to go last this time. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Phil. No, that's no problem. I think, I won't echo too much what everyone else has said, but basically, I think we've covered off the point pretty well as to what we want to do. I think part of it is going to be the how. So really, I think we're in quite, without putting my business hat on too soon, we're in quite a unique position where every fortnight your target market, if you want to call it that, is all in one place on a weekend. So I think in terms of how you do that, you know, we've got a lovely new big screen, an opportunity to talk to members, to fans on a regular basis. So I think that's the kind of the how, you know, if there's, you know, trying to think if we can use the screen to demonstrate what we've actually done as a trust and what that means and how simple it is to get involved. I think that's probably good. But I think it just comes back to education on both sides. I think for me, actually, Matt made the best point there of, you know, you just need to look at, ask why are they not, you know, signing up. I think that's the simplest point, you know, because once you understand that will give you the reason why. And to be honest, you know, from my point of view, I was a fan for a long time, but wasn't a member of the trust because I didn't understand what it actually was and what the benefits were and what it actually meant. You know, I fell into the bucket of, well, I pay my season ticket, so why is it that other people get priority? But then once you explain that and understand that, so I think, yeah, greater clarity on that. And how, I think, is, yeah, we've got a fantastic opportunity. Not many businesses could have their entire target market in one place every fortnight. So I think that's something to capitalize on.
Thanks all. Just to let all the attendees, well, we've got about 38 attendees at the moment. I think the chat facility should be working now. So if you want to try and chat, put any questions in the chat, I will try and I'll use them if I can. Right, on to another one. This was one that came in through the email. I'm going to paraphrase it a bit because since the question was posed, the situation has changed. So this is relation to the resolution, trust resolution number 3, which was related to club and trustee parity on the club board. Now, this has subsequently been withdrawn, but I still think that it's a good question to, you know, something along the lines is good to question. The question I got was, so the parity, the resolution was that the board would remove the requirement for parity of voting directors between those appointed directly from the trust and those from external sources. The question was, what's your understanding of this proposal? Do you think it requires greater scrutiny and discussion amongst all trust members rather than those at the AGM? So I think that's probably a subject which the members would be interested to see your views on. So who gets the first one at this one, unfortunately? Paul, I'll go with you first, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. Definitely, I think it is something that should get proper scrutiny before any change like that is made, because we're talking about quite a major change. And I know we haven't quite got parity at the moment, but we used to have parity where it was a split between trust board members on the club board and club non-trust board members. And I see no reason why that should be changed. It seemed to work really well. And going back in the past, when it wasn't like that, there were lots of issues about things going on the trust board weren't aware of. So I think that is how it should be and how it should be going forward. And any thought of a change should be a special meeting of all membership, get proper time to consider it in full without any question.
Steve, you said you were interested in governance. That sounds like one for you as well.
Yeah, no, clearly, I think if you know, we're obviously a trust owned club. I think that we need parity in terms of representation on the club board as part of that. In terms of the complexities of the actual issue itself, I would obviously have to kind of have a look at some of the stuff to do with the relationship between the club board and the trust. But you know, in general, the principle is that if we are the owners of the club, we need parity on that board, and our trust representatives need to have the same rights as all the rest of the directors of the football club.
I'll go, Clive.
A little bit difficult for me because obviously I'm one of the trusted appointed directors on the board, so I do have the advantage, if you like, of seeing how that board works on a month by month basis. This generally I've allowed the discussion to continue amongst the trust board, specifically because I'm obviously somewhat compromised in that position. I think the really difficult thing, so from my experience compared to historically, I guess, is how the club board now works. How I feel as a trust appointed director regarding do I trust the other directors, etc., etc. I personally feel quite comfortable. I think the challenges we have are what we believe parity to be. So the rules basically say that the trust appoint X number of directors, and that is the same amount as the club would appoint. I have to say that myself, Nick, and Elaine were involved in the interviews for the independent directors this time, and that was kind of really eye-opening. It's not something we maybe would have thought 10 or 15 years ago, is to put an advert out for independent directors with the wealth of business experience to come and help us at Exeter City. I don't think that would have happened 10, 15 years ago. And certainly by the quality of the people and the experience they've got, as well as a connection to Exeter in one way or another, it's almost a question of why wouldn't you have done this before? Because obviously the club board itself is getting some excellent people with strengths in various areas that don't naturally come from the trust side of things. So from my point of view, I've let the trust board discuss it. I personally feel quite comfortable, but I also really do understand that it's difficult to explain that to the membership. I'm fortunate enough to have been in the boardroom. I know how I feel in the boardroom, and I one thing I really do believe is that there's no doubt in that boardroom who the owners of the football club are.
I'm just checking my list to make sure I've done it. Excuse me, Jamie, go. Not going to make you go last this time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil. I think, to be honest, yeah, following on from what Clive has been saying, really is I think that thinking about what that would actually mean is, if it was some of the wording was there around kind of with immediate effect, is just the disruptive nature of that. And I think really, I'm running for election here. I'm not in the room at the moment. So I think for me, it'd be a case of understanding the dynamics within that, because what we really want are proper kind of policies and processes in the first instance to make sure that people going in are of the right sort of caliber and have the right sort of motivation, so to speak. And I think we've been doing that for a very long time at a fantastic level. So long as that continues, I don't think there's a major concern from my point of view. I would be relatively comfortable, but that's something, unfortunately, I can't really have too much of an opinion on until if at all I'm in the room. But yeah, kind of echo what Clive was saying really on that one.
Ian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, obviously I'm not privy to why the motion was raised, and answering just purely the question, I do feel that the motion was worded slightly vaguely, and I think that was the general feeling from most people. Going on personal feeling, parity seems to be kind of the right way to go, especially with the trust. However, I think if this had been raised a couple of months ago and you could have convinced me why it was raised and given me a good reason, which kind of Clive, I think, has alluded to there, then possibly I would have voted in favour of it. I think it's just basically it's just come down to the whys and what fors really for me, and sort of it seems like it was very rushed through, not ill thought out, but perhaps vague. So in answer to the question, I think it just needs to be delved into a little bit deeper and not so close to the AGM. So yeah.
Mick, do you want to go with that one?
I don't know what else to say really, because all the points that's been raised have been really valid, and I can't really sort of add more to that personally.
Fair
There's
enough.
been good points, and I've agreed with all of them. So I'm just going to go with what's been said basically. Thank
you. Sorry, Matthew, I'll go to you next because I recognise I've got a couple of trustees as well, and so you're probably in a bit. Leave you to go first and then answer though.
I really like Clive's answer. I think if that was probably explained on the initial email, were it going out, I think people would have different thoughts about it. I know there's been a lot of strong worded emails in different supporters groups going around over the last couple of weeks, and it's good that the club have listened to the fans really. The trust have listened to the fans and they've taken those points out, and it'd be discussed at a later date. But I think then it does still need to be parity on the board. I think it's one of those things that people have been asking for many years. I think one of the fans I know was talking about it and going into great detail about it and how strong people feel about it. So I think it's something we need to discuss in a bit more detail, but I think explaining to all the different fans about the reasoning we're doing it. I think, like I said, Clive explained it quite in good terms, and I think from that, I think if that was explained in the email, maybe people have different thoughts about it. But I still think we need parity on the board.
Thank you. Will?
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, Clive's done a great job of illustrating the kind of the internal mechanisms. That's not always so easy to see. For my personal view as a trustee and as a supporter and as a member, my view was that parity was, and without being too bombastic, was hard fought and hard won. I'm in favour of parity. I understand parity can have different view, different setup, but again, because of that, I agreed that it was a suitable seriousness, that it was something that had to go out to the membership. I understand the responses that have been given. I have no issue with that, and I think it's right for the resolution to be withdrawn at this stage. And for this exercise, should it continue, again, to go back to the importance of democracy, engagement and communication, that this becomes a longer conversation, given more time for people to engage properly. And so we see through that democratic spirit, that thread that runs through our ownership model. So it's a very good question and a very interesting issue that I'm sure will be addressed more fully in time.
Sorry, Richard, you get to go last on this one.
Okay, I think everybody's covered everything. When I was company secretary, it was quite obvious to me, just observing meetings, that there was a divide between the experienced business people and the trustees. And I think that gap has now been bridged quite sufficiently by the experience that Clive, Elaine, and before them, Pete Holden and Mick have adopted by learning from the other people. So I think I'm quite relaxed about it in many ways. Everybody must be comfortable with it, though. I think it's very important that everybody's comfortable. This is a democratic organisation, so yeah, it should be debated, and there should be a case put for and against, because I know some people have reservations. How you get someone to actually be a leader of the against and somebody to be a leader of the for is something that we will need to work out. It's very much about balance. We need business experience on the board, but we need the representation of the trust. To be quite honest, the club has, or the trust and club have a service level agreement, and they have a governance manual. And those two documents do give the trust a lot of control, the majority of the control. The only problem would be if anything went wrong, we would have to act retrospectively by engaging the governance manual or the SLA, and that could be a weakness. But to me, it's all about balance between business experience and the enthusiasm of fans.
Thanks, folks. One from the chat, just to prove that the chat is working. What are the candidates' views on diversity on the trust board and ensuring a variety of supporter and trust members' voices are heard in the board's debate? Starting with Jamie, go first.
Thank you for that. I think that's quite similar actually to the one of the first questions we were asked, prior to this session. But regardless, I think really a lot of it comes down to the club and the trust has already done a fantastic job up to this point. With all the initiatives that have been put on with Her Game 2 and everything else that we've been doing. I think clearly the question that was raised then was the fact that, putting it bluntly, there's only men going for a position on the board. And I think while I think every candidate looks to be strong in their own kind of unique way, I think it is important that, from my beliefs anyway, there is a representation of all manner of people, just because they will have their own views on what's their experience of going to Exeter City and what's their experience of being a fan. I think, to be honest, it continues to be just a case of using our social media channels to raise awareness. Look at all the amazing work that we've done with the women's football club, and look how well they are continuing to do. I think they're basically second, if not first, in the league at the moment. So it's continuing to raise awareness of that, because that will just force engagement, or hopefully promote engagement from a whole kind of diverse range of people, allowing them to get involved, and hopefully in the near future they'll then be willing and wanting to kind of commit themselves to this kind of process.
Matthew? I
think, like you said, it was answered in the question before, and I think there is certain groups that we need to work with going forward. Obviously, we've appointed a representative for Her Game 2, which was appointed last week. There's certain other different areas that we can include in these working groups as well, so we can get get people's thoughts on these different areas that people feel quite strong about, and to listen to these people and to get their input, and obviously to bring it back to the board as well, so that all people are listened to across the spectrum within the trust.
Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. The big thing I think to stress is that our meetings are open in part for anyone to join and contribute. And through that engagement, we need to make members, particularly women, ethnic minorities, LGBT, and all the protected groups, more aware of their ability to participate in this way. I think there's also an opportunity for the trust to second people to help out with the work of the trust. And we need to make more inroads in that direction as well. I'm a member of both the trust community and the owners and members work group, and both are aware and try and make progress on the responsibilities on the equality, diversity and inclusion level. I'm also a member of the club's One Game, One Community group, which focuses football for all. But I think it's up to the members really to become involved, to start attending meetings, because you can contribute. You can also write to us and let us know your views. A lot of people seem to save it up for the AGMs, when really we're open and we want to talk. There will be a trust presence in the ticket booths going forward, and it's important that people make contact with us through that medium.
Mick, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's obviously very important for everyone to contribute and have their say. Doesn't matter about disability or background or where you come from. It's for everyone, and they've got a chance to have their say. So it's very important to get the message out through social media, the club itself, obviously, everything. Sorry, and the more we can do this, the more we can be, I hope, successfully in trying to get the word out that it's for everyone, not just for trust members or people of the board. It's for everyone to have their say in how the club should run and have their opinions.
Cool. Paul?
Yeah, I can only echo. I think the club does do a lot of things with diversity and encouraging different groups to get involved in the club. And I think the trust does as well. You look at Elaine Davis, just completed 9 years on the trust board, still a club board member. It's an example of a woman being heavily involved in trust and club affairs. And, that should encourage a lot more women to be involved. And the women's team, and how good that is and how well they're doing, and how great it was with the game that's played at St James Park recently. I think the trust and promotes that as much as it can, and the more we do that, the better.
Steve?
Yeah, it's excuse me. Yeah, something that I sometimes have to say down at my local. Just because I'm a white bloke doesn't mean to say I think exactly the same way that you do. I think we have to be open as a board, as a club. I think there are a number of initiatives. I don't think that we just need to make sure that we work with groups like Her Game 2. I think we need to encourage the grassroots through This Girl Can. I currently am involved in walking football, and that is very inclusive in terms of the way in which women are actually represented and people from different backgrounds and different abilities, even in the same teams. And I think it's that openness and transparency that as a board we should be encouraging. And I just think we kind of need to check ourselves sometimes, and just our own attitudes in terms of, the sorts of views that we put forward. It's not these and they or them. It's actually people, supporters are supporters, irrespective of their background. And I think that we need to be open, and we need to actually just reach out to some groups that perhaps might be underrepresented on the board. And in particular, as I'm looking around, this is an all-male group, and I think we definitely need to encourage more females involved in both the trust board and also in terms of just the whole running of the club.
Ian?
Yeah, just echo what everybody else said, really. And I think, as I've said before, kind of sort of hammering home the message, the trust ethos. Every home game, pretty much, you see that we're jumping on board with Her Game Too or LGBT various engagements, and just sort of hammering the message home. That anybody can join the trust board. It's open for anybody. As people said, it's not us and them. We're all fans of the club. We're all trust members. I understand there's been a few women on the board over the last couple of years, and Elaine, of course. It is a shame that it's all men tonight, but I'm sure that will change if we just continue hammering home the message.
I don't think I think I've got everybody. Clive, did I ask you that one? I don't think I did.
No. As everybody else has said, it's very similar to a question that was asked in the written questions that were given before this. So if anybody wants to go off and read those, there are a few quite long and valuable answers in there. Generally, I think there's no getting away from the fact that it's great to have 10 candidates. For some reason, every year I've stood, there's been lots of candidates. Don't know why that is. But it is obviously disappointing not to see any females if we're talking about female diversity at the moment on the trust board. I don't know why that is, and I know that some of the attendees are obviously be female tonight. Some of them will have great skills that they can bring to the trust board. So if I could do a little bit of an advert for once this election's finished, and the trust does have a number of working groups, and you don't have to be a trustee. In fact, over the years, there have been numerous volunteers on those boards, and those numbers have dropped a little bit as we become more successful as a football club, maybe. But if you are a female and you like to get involved in the trust, then these are, and for anybody, great opportunities to get involved in the working groups to see how the trust works. And it might take away some of the apprehension that people feel about standing for election. I think that's really a great way of getting yourself involved with the trust without actually having to put yourself on a TV screen with probably 9 males.
Thanks, Clive. I'm just going up to the one that I'm just following the questions. Another one.
Sorry to jump in.
Sorry, Will, did I forget you?
Yeah, you did, but it's all right. I won't hold it against you. It's fine.
I've got a list, and I haven't ticked you off on that one as well. I'm just trying to keep track of it. Go for it, Will. Sorry.
Don't trouble you. It's just it's a really important question, and I think I thank Bernadette for raising it. It's shown time and time again within any organisation that diversity at board level is hugely beneficial. So whether that be the club board or the trust board, it's certainly something that we should look to address, whether this is coincidence or cultural. Regardless, I just wanted to echo the point about the working groups that has been made. My introduction to the trust before standing for election was joining the comms group, and then Kaylee Jade West came through that same process. And I think time and time again through the years, we've seen a huge number of valuable contributions from people from broader backgrounds. So yeah, I think we need to be seeking to improve the breadth of representation. Again, I think direct engagement is important. Inclusion is at the heart of everything we do at the Exeter City Community Trust. So time and time again, when we're out and about in the public, we extol the virtues of our supporter-owned model and the benefits of being a community-owned football club. But with that comes sometimes a misunderstanding of what we are as an organisation. So the number of times people say, "I had no idea you're like that," or "you do that." So again, it's consistent communication and making the boards, the working groups, and the club as a whole welcoming space across the board. So I think it's a cultural thing that needs to be addressed. That I think we can do more with.
Thanks, everybody. So another one off the chat. What do you consider to be the top 3 priorities of the trust over the next few years? I guess if you're elected, it will be for 3 years. So, Paul, I'll open with that. You can have that one first.
Cheers, thank you for that. Obviously, growing membership. I think that's an absolute must to keep on growing membership. Maybe sort of 5,000, maybe a target figure, something like that to shoot forward. Talk about all these season ticket holders we want to try and turn into trust members, as well as growing the fan base. Hopefully we get more trust members as a result of that. I would like to see in the next 3 years, certainly the trust trying to look at the club moving forward on the field as well, which is quite crucial. That's really why we're supporters. Becoming an established League One team, competing in the playoffs hopefully, and shooting for that dream maybe of getting to the Championship. I'd love to see that in the next 3 years. We've got we've certainly got good young players coming through. The team played well last night despite losing. The signs are really good that we can carry on well on the field over the next 3 years. Just basically trying to improve everything the club does. Great what's going on at the training ground, stuff we do at the ground as well, what we do for the fans and stuff, improve the hospitality side. All those sort of things will bring in more revenue and help self-finance things over the period of the next 3 years. So all that side really, we can become more self-financing the more we can do on that sort of side.
Okay. Ian, how about your 3?
Yeah, obviously number 1 is grow the membership. I think that's sort of the foundation of the trust really, and greater diversity in the membership, as we discussed with season ticket holders, but also younger people becoming members. So that's number 1. Yes, League One consistently performing. Maybe the next 3 years to be as good in League One as the last 3 years in League Two were. That would be something. And also, I think for me personally, I'd like to see the women's team improve incrementally. I understand they've already improved quite considerably over the last few years. I just think there's more room to grow in that respect as well.
Richard.
Thanks, Bill. 3 things then. Governance and stability in finance is one. Very, very important that we don't lose the thread. We have to become sustainable in League One. Membership and diversity. And finally, fan experience. Keeping improving and looking after our supporters and our members to make sure they keep with us.
Okay, Stephen. We make it.
Yeah, difficult to just pick on sort of three priorities, but I think I'd echo Richard in terms of making sure that the club continues to be well run, that it's financially stable is one of the key priorities. Secondly, is obviously increasing the diversity of the membership and kind of looking at, as I said earlier on, in terms of how we can actually kind of grow that membership, in terms of looking at the demographics of current membership and kind of doing some sort of analysis around how we can actually increase that membership. The kind of third aspect really for me, the third priority is, and it's allied to the second point, which is trying to realise the ambition of the trust to be a social benefit organisation. My background is obviously working within charities within Exeter and the surrounding districts, and I think the trust can actually do more in terms of working with local charities, local organisations, and I think that would have two benefits. One is actually it would increase the support for the football club, but it would also be an increase in terms of membership, but it would also realise the ambition of a supporters own club to be a social benefit organisation, which I think is fairly crucial in terms of the ethos of the club and the way that we want to move forward as a progressive football club.
Jamie?
Thanks, Phil. Obviously, yeah, quite a lot of good answers given already. I think I will leave the growing membership aside because that's obviously going to be priority number one. I think we've already touched on as well the diversity point. I think clearly that just needs to be a focus just through reasons we've previously discussed. I think as a tangible target, I think the trust working with the club just to maintain the number one ranking for the fan engagement index. I think that is a key kind of output of the points that everyone else has already discussed around, as a match day experience, we do want to be leading, and then also in terms of continuing with the trust engagement that gives to the fans, and I think for me with my sort of accountant hat on, my third point would be, people have touched on it sort of, it's from a financial point of view, it's just continuing to promote and kind of improve our level of recurring revenue, because fundamentally that's what we can rely on to pay the wages of the players, and as that improves, the more we can kind of attract better talent. And I think really you've got to look even outside of football, to be honest, looking at other clubs and how they do that. It's the corporate aspect, I think, for me that I think should be quite a good focus. Whether that is in a football context or even non-football context, there's obviously limitations within availability of infrastructure and cost of investment. But I think really, if we are trying to think long term, which we have done, look at the Cliff Hill project, I think really that's one, for me personally, one of the most important avenues that we should be exploring to ensure that the continued sort of success up the leagues that we all think is all possible.
Will, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Phil. The best questions leave you with lots of answers, don't they? So thank you for that, for this one. I'm going to try not to cheat. I think I'm just going to frame this with to meet our objective to be a successful and sustainable League One football, challenging, almost transferring what we achieved in League Two in recent seasons into League One status in that sustainable fashion. Within that, I think priorities for the trust to review our strategy was set whilst we were still within that mission to get out of League Two and back into League One. We need to look at the vision, mission and objectives of that. Within that, I think we need to prioritise focusing on engaged communities, and that can work in a number of senses. I agree with what Stephen says about developing audiences, and I think I put in my manifesto about developing and engaging the audiences of the future. This works on a number of levels within that social benefit sense, but also within a business sense, and capitalizing the 24/7 nature of the business, owing to the fact that we have 23 to 27, 28, depending on cup runs, key business days of the year. So that's been an ongoing priority, and that really needs to come into focus now. And we really need to prioritize a theme of the best people. And I know this is something that Nick advocates through his work in his various roles, but attracting the best people into the football club, whether that be on the football side of things, in the administrative side of things, or in and around the community side of things. I think that's key to all organisations. And so that must be a priority within this revision of the strategy and our vision and mission objectives going forward. It's an exciting time, so important to ask that question, and it's good to hear various ideas from people on the panel.
Mick, do you want to go?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. Obviously, priority would be to sustain trust membership, to improve it over the next 3 years, to make sure that the club itself have a decent squad and be up there challenging for promotion. And who knows, we might be even challenging for the championship one day. You never know. But I think that this club has got a lot of bite, and there's no reason why we can't be promoted. It just needs ambition and drive. I think secondly, obviously, more for the trust as well. Diversity is important. So spread the word around social media. And thirdly, for personal choice, would be to see the Adam Stansfield stand extended to the big bank, because I think by that time we should have enough money in the pot to do just that. So that would be my personal ambition, to see the Adam Stansfield stand extended.
Cool. Matthew, sorry.
Obviously, everyone said it, growing the membership. Obviously, how many people we've got at the moment. I know the social media team are looking to grow that. Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So growing the membership and the diversity of that. Obviously, we've got a very good spokesman for the club, a chap called David Earl. I don't know if people have been listening to his podcast at the moment, but he's actually increasing our fan base across the UK. We seem to get more and more people at the moment wanting to be involved or hear about Exeter City. So I think our membership can grow quite a bit over the next couple of years as people want to get involved with the business, but also looking at the season ticket holders and getting, you know, that 18 to 23 demographic that we say that we're missing as well, the trust numbers. I think both the men's and the women's team are excelling at the moment. Obviously, we've increased the financial aspect of giving money to the women's team at the moment. Hopefully that will increase as well as they move up through the leagues. And hopefully for us, it's that League One stability. And also looking at Project 7000, we looked at Project 6000 and we seem to be hitting that with the crowds this season. And hopefully we'll sustain that for the rest of the season. But actually Project 7000 is just round the corner. What does that look like? And how does that move our business model forward?
Cool. Sorry, last but not least, Clive.
Thank you. Just three, that's the difficult one, isn't it? I think everybody's covered most things, but I think the primary thing that we need to do, perhaps before all the other things, is to do what the trust is here for, which is to look after this football club, to grow its income so it can be sustainable, so that we can invest on the pitch, and of course membership comes into that. We need to look after our academy, which produces both on the pitch and financially for ourselves. Our infrastructure, obviously, we need to keep up with that. There's forever work to be done on the stadium, and it's fantastic the work that we're doing out of the training ground now. Obviously, we need to increase the membership, because that money is basically going straight onto the pitch to improve the team. And then, of course, with a football club and a stable football club comes the ability to help in the community, some of the great work we're already doing. But first and foremost, I think we need to look after the football club to make sure it's here for years to come, so it can continue to grow in the community, and continue to grow in its success, basically.
Cool, thank you. Here's another one. This was off the email. So the question is, have you run for election previously? And if not, what made you decide to run now? Well, I suppose I better start with the newbies for that one. That's probably, I'll start. Paul, do you want to go first?
Yep. Obviously, I have run before, and I did do 3 years on the Trust Board, which is really interesting. A lot of enjoyable moments, a lot of challenging times as well. But I found it very satisfying doing that period. That's really one of the main reasons I'm standing again, because I felt I've still got something to offer, and I enjoyed my time there before, and I think I've got the time to give it a proper go again now as well. So yes, that's why I'm standing again, really. I think I've got something to offer, really.
Mick.
Hi, yes, along the lines of what Paul had just said, it's my second time to try and be successful. Obviously, there's a few people out there that they don't know me, that they think that I could make an impact. So I thought, well, why not give it a go for the second time? I guess any opinion is valued. And if I'm elected, which would be quite nice, then it would be at long last a chance to actually have an input and have a real say concerning the trust and the club itself.
Jamie?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so this is my first time running for election, and to be honest, it's because over the last sort of 10 years or so, I wasn't as old as I am finally am now. So just due to other commitments, I've, whether that was training, time, input into my career, last few years just letting the dust settle. I think now is really I've finally gathered enough life experience and professional experience to finally have something to offer. I think, being completely honest, my involvement in this process is just because I want to see as much competition on running for the board as possible. I think, looking at the quality, when I saw all the people come out this time, it was fantastic, because I just thought, well, look, even if it's not me, there's some fantastic candidates here, and that's all it really was about for me. It's just making sure that the highest caliber of people will be selected. So yeah, what's changed for me is just personal circumstances. I'm finally in a position where I've got something valuable to offer, and I want to give back to a club that, especially over COVID and lockdown, I'm sure we'll all agree, it was fantastic when it came back and gave us something to follow and to enjoy. So it's mainly about, as I said in my manifesto, giving back with something that's actually helpful at a crucial time, I think, with the financial stretches that are going to be put on the club. So I think I've got an important and useful skill set, but mainly, to be honest, it was just about ensuring a decent skill set will be accessed, whoever is selected at this process.
Cool, Matthew.
Hi there. It's my first time in running. I think part of it is I've helped with a football tournament. We created a football tournament this year, really, which started again after the pandemic. It was getting involved with all the different corporate members as well as trust members, really, putting it all together and making it a success. The reason I've obviously put myself forward as well, I enjoyed doing that. Also, I've recently changed to a 4-day week. My business company I work for at the moment have changed our working patterns, which means I have a day off each week that I put forward and spend time really helping the trust and dedicate that time each week to the trust.
Cool. Ian.
Yeah, it's my first time standing for election. Basically, I've got the time at the moment. As I've said before, I'm a small business owner in a lucky, fortunate position that the business is kind of running itself at the moment. So I have plenty of time to kind of implement ideas. I mean, it's all very well having lots and lots of ideas, but it's having the time to implement them as well. So I have that. I'm also sort of a semi-stay-at-home dad at the moment, so I have that as well. Some of you will know that my wife is the membership secretary at the moment, and over the last couple of years, I've sort of seen behind the curtain, as it were, how certain things are done, and I sort of have a real passion to boost the membership numbers, and I've sort of several ideas how that could be achieved. So yeah, that's why I'm standing, really.
Stephen.
Yeah, it's my first time for standing for the trust. I suppose it's been a bit of a slow burn for me in terms of kind of my appreciation for the trust has kind of grown over the years. And a couple of years ago, I was approached by the trust in my role as Chief Executive of Exeter Community Initiatives to be Supporters Trust, a partner of the Supporters Trust. And I've worked with members of the Trust Board on various campaigns to kind of promote people that wouldn't have had tickets to actually get involved in going to matches, support on campaigns to support families that are disadvantaged. And I suppose, thinking in terms of my time of life, I'm actually stepping down as chief executive of ECI, and I think with the experience that I've got in terms of my work with a charitable organisation which has kind of got a substantial number of employees, has kind of got a turnover of nearly £1 million. It's just kind of putting some of that expertise in terms of the governance, the finance, the kind of ethical stance of charities back into the football club. And because I'm standing down, I'll obviously have more time to spend on doing those sorts of things with the club. And I think that just at this particular moment in time, it's just kind of it's a certain moment in terms of my own life, in terms of thinking, well, I'm stepping back from this role. I'm looking at other things that I want to contribute my time to. The football club's always been a passion of mine, and I think now, really, for me, the time is right to actually contribute something back to the club, and that's why I'm standing.
I will ask the existing trustees as well. Richard.
Thanks, Phil. I see it's an opportunity to continue to make a difference. There's just so much to do, to be quite honest. This club is important to me, it's important to you, and it's important to our community as well. I think it's important as well to respect members and champion their agenda. And that's something I'm very keen to do. I have the time and energy, and I just want to use my skills and abilities.
Cool. Clive?
Yeah, so this is my third election. We've been fortunate to be elected in the two previously 3-year terms. I've also had the honour of being elected by fellow trustees to the club board for the last 4 years, and that's been a huge honour. Basically, I've loved football all my life, like I'm sure we all have. It's fantastic to move to Exeter and discover a football club that you can actually really become part of. I started off as a volunteer for the Junior Grecians about 9 or 10 years ago. Saw some things that I thought I could contribute from my previous hospitality and retail experience over the years. And it's been a great journey, and I'm one for seeing progress within the club. Fortunately, over the last six years or so, seen a lot of progress, and I realise a lot of supporters have supported the club a lot longer than I, and have suffered. I'm fortunate to say I haven't actually suffered that much. So I understand where some of you are coming from. It's a huge honour to work as part of a team on the trust board and the club board. It's certainly easier when you're successful. we haven't had too many issues over the years. When I first came on, it was a little bit more raucous, if you like, towards the end of the Portisdale reign, etc. But it's certainly been a great journey. I think I've got something to offer over the next 3 years, so hence I'm standing again. Thank you.
Will, sorry, your last one this time.
No, not at all, Phil. No problem at all. Yeah, so my second election, having noted earlier, I was elected in 2019. I joined the board initially. I think I mentioned I joined the comms group, and so it was a progression from there. Was honoured to be advocated, cajoled, persuaded, however you want to put it, by some of the key figures: Pete Martin, Paul Farley, Martin Weiler, great stalwarts of the trust. So to have their backing to go forward, and essentially wanted to participate and bring my skill set to the table to help on the mission to return to League One. Delighted that we've done that. It's been an incredible journey getting there. None of us expected COVID in the middle of that, but to tackle that was an interesting challenge. And I think as a club and a trust, we did well. I think Clive and others have noted the really important factor that it is a collective. We are a team, and it's a real privilege to be part of that team. So now that we're in League One, I want to continue on that journey, take the experience that I've gained over the last 3 years, and hopefully do some good with it. Again, I'm blessed. I work at St James Park, so I'm in and around the place 5, 6, 7 days a week. I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. So taking that, my circumstance, my experience, for me it was a no-brainer to stand for a second time. And like Clive, there seems to be loads of people when I stand for election, but I welcome it, and whoever's selected from this group of people this evening has given me great confidence in the next board.
Cool. Completely different subject, I think. Now this is off the chat. So club shop frustrations. I think everybody's aware there's a potential revenue stream that perhaps isn't living up to its potential and hasn't been for a while. How can the trust support this and increase their merchandise through the club shop? Paul.
I think by improving the range and making some more fashionable items available in the shop that appeal to young people as well. It's a bit staid and boring, some of the stuff that's available in the shop. You can only sell so many replica shirts, and it is with the club doing so well, it's a crest of a wave that we can really go with. And I think some young ideas, some more innovative ideas on stuff that we sell, perhaps better online sales as well. When you try and go online, it's not very inspiring. It doesn't make you want to go on there and click and buy. So I think some real investment needs to be made in those areas. Because while the club's doing well, you can sell merchandise, people want to buy merchandise.
Steve?
Yeah, I kind of echo that in terms of just looking at the range and kind of looking at what sorts of things you can actually supply through things like the club shop. Certainly, I kind of echo the sentiments about the online stuff. Sometimes it's not always very clear. And sometimes you don't always get the stock. I mean, I've got a little bit of a passion for buying Exeter City Football Club socks, and you don't get socks in the shop. So I mean, I don't know whether it's something that is a big seller, but it would certainly appeal to me. You know, I think that obviously it is actually around kind of maximising the online presence, but also kind of the visual layout of the shop and kind of how it actually looks, and looking at perhaps other outlets as well. But that's something I think that I would obviously want to explore if I do get elected to the board.
Mick?
Hi, I think the case is the price, because a lot of the stuff that I've seen in the club shop is it's quite expensive. Sorry. So I think I don't know if they have a say in how much an item is actually priced, but I think, you know, not everyone can afford a replica T-shirt, things like that. And I think the price issue should be addressed for a lot of the items in the club shop. Personally, I can't really comment about the online things. I don't do online shopping as such when it comes to buying certain items, so I can't really comment on that one. So I think that there should be obviously a bit more investment in the club shop itself.
Will?
Yeah, sure. I'm not a huge consumer myself, and I don't claim to be a specialist in this field. I'm going to go back to the point made earlier about best people. I believe the management team of the shop are in that bracket, and they're certainly looking to improve what they do week on week, month on month, year on year. Clive might be better placed, and I'll throw you a pass here, Clive, but I believe the shop has seen record sales. So there's certainly, if you're looking at the bottom line, there have been great improvements. But again, returning to the democratic nature of the club, it's right to ask this question, and across the board, issues with the football club and with the supporters trust should always be raised in this way. I would, knowing the nature of Nick, who's in charge of retail, go and have a conversation with him. I think that's a wonderful thing about our football club. It really is a kind of a community club, and he'd be open to that kind of conversation. So I'll let him know that I've said that when I see him in the morning. Hopefully Clive can clarify my assertion about the sales. And whilst there's things still to be done, I'm confident in the direction of travel.
Jamie?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I think there's quite a few kind of points to address here. I think first of all, I'm not going to pretend that I'm some expert in sales or marketing. There's plenty of other well-respected people on the board that will be doing that. But I think first thing, the point here is that, you know, we think it's a revenue stream that we're really missing out on. I think firstly, I don't know if we've done like a benchmarking exercise or could do one against other clubs. Is it underperforming? I don't know. So it would be really good to understand that. My view on the online shop is consistent with everyone else's. I think it could be better laid out with my accountant hat on. There's all manner of programs and integrations you can do, which aren't particularly costly, which will make a much smoother kind of customer experience. It'll integrate it all, and from an accounting point of view, it's much smoother. So there's certainly things that can be done, and I think at the club, I'm already aware that the club's already looking at those kind of things, and then that will enable kind of more granular use of data that can then drive buying decisions. I think sometimes in the past we've also had sort of supply chain issues whereby people, you know, I think towards the beginning of this season there was people want home or away shirts, and right at the beginning of the season they weren't available, which is quite a critical point. So again, use of data, better buying power, that will help smooth that kind of thing. things like use of social media as well, that can help drive sales. Silly, you know, I think there's a fashion show coming up at John Lewis. You know, those are the kind of things that, you know, with the club. Sorry, that sounded like a really irrelevant point. But basically, yeah. So there's some things that I think the club is actually doing really well. Some things that I know the club is starting to look at and can continue to do better. Comes back to a point that I think Matthew made some earlier around right at the beginning around kind of why season ticket holders not converting into memberships. Well, I think it was a really good point asking what, you know, why. So why, you know, how do we know that our stock line is suited to what our consumers want? Ask them. I think it's quite a simple point. And I think they're really the sort of the main points. And, you know, again, Matthew mentioned earlier around David Earl is quite a key figure. I don't know whether there's opportunities for a pair of Exeter City dungarees. I think he's fond of those. Yeah, I think I'll leave that to everyone else's opinion. But yeah, so plenty of things to talk about there. I'll hand over to someone else.
Clive, I guess you probably know more about this and for your sins than everybody else.
I know nothing about it because the question is a negative question, so it can't be for me. I think the retail is all about finding the golden goose, isn't it? And it's the same in our food kiosks. It's easy for people to say they'd like to see a larger variety of product, but when you ask 100 people what that product is, they all say different things. I think the shop is evolving. I 100% agree with the online issues. That is our showcase. A lot of our supporters aren't in Exeter, and if they are, they're not getting down to the shop. They're looking online. So if we don't have everything we stock online, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot to start with, because then you start to make judgments about what our stock is just by looking to see what's online. They don't necessarily. They're not necessarily the same thing. There are a number of issues, and while we talk about shirts and things like that, supply is a real problem generally with all the suppliers. This year, Joma managed to deliver the shirts in time for the Family Fun Day, which was always the plan. It's been the plan for years, but this year they finally delivered. They also solved some of the issues around sizing, especially the larger sizing, and the fact that they did deliver and it did come in on the Family Fun Day, saw huge sales on that day. It's perfect day to launch a shirt. Fantastic. Although resupply is not necessarily that easy. So we early on in the process, I think we ran out of large shirts, and just getting resupply is really difficult from Joma. All the suppliers have various hiccups, so it's a case of working with the suppliers to deliver like they did for the Family Fun Day this year. And I know we're constantly looking at different suppliers so that we can get stock in and then restock. Nick in the shop, he's worked really hard at getting rid of things that don't sell. So whatever we do get in the shop has to sell. It's no point if we're buying 100 scarves and we only sell 30 and the rest are ending up as competition prizes or something. So I would suggest that the actual stock in the shop is far better than what displayed online. And it may well be that shop needs looking at. It's been around for a while. And I would suggest, and I would agree actually with what Will has said, as far as achieving its budgets for this year, the shop is doing that. But retail's all about increasing your revenues. So I don't think there's at any point that you've actually, you know, found that golden goose. You just have to keep producing products that people want to buy, and that's what retail's all about, really.
Ian?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty comprehensive answer there from Clive. Yeah, just general consensus. I think the shop could do slightly better than it does. The online shop is fairly poor, and it's not a representation of what's actually physically in the shop. My 5-year-old, he wants every bit of Exeter City kit going, and my wallet is certainly heavier than it could be at the moment, so there is that. But with Nick in the shop, you know, give him feedback, maybe arrange a few surveys. I mean, it's all very well people complaining on Xweb or Facebook or whatever, oh, I can't get such and such a thing, but if you can set out a structured survey to provide him with, give him time to implement the changes as he has been doing, evidently, that might improve the situation slightly. Also related to that point, I do believe it would be a good idea to run some independent trust merchandise as well, that could run alongside trust membership, perhaps, an exclusive bit of kit, a bit of t-shirt or mug or whatever. I know that's been touched on before, but I think that's something that could be looked into a little bit deeper as well, just to sort of expand the range as well.
Sorry, Richard, I think you're last on this one, unfortunately.
Okay, what's left to say? I am a big customer of the shop.
Sorry, you're not last.
Okay, I'm a big customer of the shop, but I do accept that the online version of their retail outlet really does need some improvement. Jamie's point about benchmarking against another club, a similar club, a comparable club, is really relevant because, like Clive and Will have alluded to, I'm aware that the shop is ahead of target and is heading for its best ever year, which makes a nonsense of us complaining about the stock that's in there. So I think they've got the right products. I think the problem they come up against is that to brand everything for Exeter City Football Club means you need to place a large minimum order to get it at a reasonable cost. And I think that's the problem that they're up against, but they're doing well. I'd love to see the range of product improve. I know that people have suggested to them that they want doggy bows and bibs for children, but just keep the suggestions coming.
So, Matthew, I forgot you were the last one. I've got a list and I'm ticking them off. Sorry, you get last this time, I'm afraid.
That's no problem at all. But yeah, I think it's what everyone said. I think the shop, if you go into shop, it's got a great selection of products. I think it just needs to be put online. I think you could look at other options, really. I think before we used to have a really good link with the terrace. I don't know actually ever find out what happens between the link with us and the terrace. We don't seem to have that link anymore, which used to provide certain other products for different casual t-shirts, I think towels and different products, really. Again, using someone like that maybe, which means that we don't need to take so much stock on board. Percentages might be a little bit lower if we use someone like a terrace, but it will diversify what products we are selling. Also, like what Ian said about the trust membership, I always remember buying my Sean Devine t-shirt from a store outside the big bank many years ago. I still wore it when he left the club, really. I still think with celebrating our 20 years of the trust running, I do think we should bring something out like an owner's top or something different, really, to celebrate that 20 years of us, running the club, really.
Cool, thank you. Another one I had by email in advance of the question, which is quite a long one, but I'll read it anyway. So I would like to pose the question to you: how do you intend to improve the communication to us trust members, the majority shareholders of the football club, on the finances of the club? There's no current transparency how much income is generated and how much is currently spent. I'm not expecting a detailed breakdown of salaries, etc., but at least a general picture with more detail than is currently available. Such is available particularly to the major shareholder of any company AGM. Jamie, you said you're the accountant. Sorry.
Yeah, let me dive in on that one. I think it's important to remember kind of this is sensitive information, and I think it's, as much as we're shareholders, there's a lot of shareholders, and it won't take a lot for that very sensitive information to get out. So inevitably, in the same way that it won't be public knowledge of the contract terms of new managers and compensation payments, there's very good reasons for that. It can influence, certainly, if you imagine if everyone knew all this information, what would happen when you're looking to buy players and sell players or whatever it is, there's a negotiation process that would weaken. That being said, I'm definitely an advocate for, and it's something that I need to understand a lot more about it before I can really form a view on it, but quite a big thing for me is sort of financial fair play, particularly given the level that we're currently on. I think ensuring other clubs adhere to financial fair play gives us a more level footing and a fairer footing in what we're doing. That would therefore mean some kind of infrastructure for regular reporting, more transparent reporting, which could potentially be done, whether that's at the highest of high levels, could be done on a quarterly basis, something like that, just to provide the like you say, the members, the shareholders, with a bit of transparency on what's been going on. It's just, you've just got to be cautious with these kind of things, just because it can be so sensitive, and therefore once you've done it down to a certain level that you can share, I'm really not sure what value that would actually provide. And that's why it's important to have these processes, to ensure that you can trust the people that are running the board and making the right decisions. So appreciate maybe not quite the answer that they're sort of looking for, but I think there's valid reasons to why that is the case.
Paul?
Again, it's very, very difficult to give too much financial information out. A lot of it's very, very confidential. So I don't know how much we can actually divulge. I know from my time previously on the trust board, there's certain things that are confidential that can't be made available to the general membership. So being as transparent as we possibly can, not keeping anything secret that we don't need to. But again, it's an area where you can only divulge so much.
Will?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, no, I think you were right to go to Jamie first on that one. Great believer in only speaking when you have something to say. So I shan't even echo his point, but just congratulate him on winning the point, I think, from my point of view, and well backed up by Paul there. I think there are things we can do to communicate better across the board. I'd also note that trust members are welcome to speak to us on match day. They're welcome to join us at trust board meetings. I think there are things that we can do with infographics to make things digestible, but I'd like to work with the finance experts on translating kind of the rules and the good sense that's been presented here into something that will have value. And again, it goes back to the point made earlier about members and supporters understanding the value of their investment. So I think the question is right to be raised, and I've been pleased with how it's been answered so far.
Oh, sorry, I was going to go, lost my train of thought there. Matthew?
Hi there. I must admit, it's probably get a lot of hate from me, but I really like the infographic that Plymouth Argyle produced last month about figures year on year for what's happening with the club. I do like to keep a vested interest in the clubs around the Southwest. I think they just did a really good job, and maybe that's something we can translate for the club. I think year on year, obviously I didn't know the club shop are going to be year on year above budget and hitting targets. Obviously season tickets have increased. There's lots of good stuff that we need to probably tell the public of what's happening with the club. I don't think we celebrate success enough as a trust and as a club. I think we do it on the pitch, which is all great, but I think there's a lot of commercial activities going on in the background that we need to celebrate a little bit more. Again, those infographics which can be produced and what information we can release. Obviously, Jamie's the expert there and what we can say and cannot say, really. But I think we just need to probably, like I say, some simple infographics just to see where we are year on year, so people know where the budget is going. I think a lot of people always talk about saying, oh, as a club, we have no money, or we can't sign people. Actually, there is a certain running cost for everything from the academy. The academy is a massive running cost for that, but we make a profit from the players that we sell, which come through from the academy. So I think a little bit more communication is needed, I would say, but I don't know what in which form. I'd probably have to ask a financial expert for that.
Richard?
Okay. I think we can improve communication on this one. I know that the club are producing new accounts this year, which will be far more easy for supporters to understand. Any supporter can go onto Company's House and can look at the accounts of Exeter City Football Club and any other football club. And there's a whole wealth of information there. So perhaps we just need to point people in the direction where they can go to find this information. We did used to provide, in the very early years of the trust, a match-by-match breakdown in the programme. Perhaps we ought to reconsider doing that again, but it was a huge effort to produce those statistics.
Stephen?
I think the two watchwords for me around this, which have already been mentioned, are around kind of transparency and communication. I think that those are fairly key in terms of making sure, and it's a phrase of Will's, that people realise the value of their investment. I obviously take Jamie's point in terms of the commercial sensitivity. That's the same with any organisation, but kind of with my background in the charitable sector, when we're spending other people's money, that we have to be very transparent about how we spend that money. Richard's pointed out the fact that the club accounts are available on on Companies House website. It's always very interesting reading accounts. You get to find out all sorts of different things about all sorts of different people. But I kind of think that the presentation of those accounts kind of needs to be a bit better communicated. So in terms of the charity that I work for, we do that in three ways. One, we produce very, very comprehensive charitable accounts. Secondly, we have a second stage, which is like an annual impact review, where you kind of get to see an overall picture, and you could do that on a quarterly basis. And then as Matthew suggested, infographics, just to make sure that those things are actually sort of clear and transparent to people. But I think we also need to stress the fact that there are decisions that are made within any organisation which are commercially sensitive, and I think we need to basically in part we need to just explain part of that as part of that transparency, that there are some things that we cannot actually reveal because there are things around compensation, around payments, that are commercially sensitive. And I think we do need to make sure that the membership of the trust are aware that those are some of the constraints that we currently work under, and sometimes that's not always very clearly communicated, and I think that just feels sometimes a little bit like just a lack of transparency if we don't reiterate that. But we also need to make sure that we are that as transparent as we can be at every stage.
Ian?
Yeah, as Richard just said, if you go on Companies House, you can sort of get a rough idea of how things are going. And as Stephen just said, a bit of transparency maybe in emphasising certain things is also, would be a good idea. Just to take it in a slightly different direction, I think there's a good reason why certain things aren't delved into in great detail, probably because going back again to not having a private benefactor, somebody who can dip their hand in their pocket at will. Every penny that we earn as a club, we sort of invest back into the club. And, that can put us at a disadvantage sometimes when you're talking about budgeting and, things like that.
Sorry, Clive, you get to go last this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is the word. Certainly the way we present the club accounts and trust accounts is evolving at the moment. There was some hope that at the AGM this year we would have some infographic style presentation. I'm not 100% sure if we'll be ready for that, but it is a work in progress. And the club, I believe, have traditionally published shorter version accounts, but this year it's going to be the long version. So a work in progress again, I think.
I haven't forgotten Mick. I think he's just stepped away for a moment. One that's just come in that's probably interesting. What improvements would the candidates like to see at St James's Park? Steve?
I think that improving the fan experience in terms of looking at improvements in the Red Square, looking at things to do with improvements around catering. I think all of those things are work in progress, and I think we've kind of got to acknowledge the work that's already gone on by a lot of people in terms of making some of those improvements, because some of the things that have actually happened over the years in terms of the improvements in terms of the Red Square, in terms of some of the catering, in terms of some of the outlets, has been a real step change in terms of the way in which the club is presented. But I think there's just more work that would kind of need to be done in that respect. One thing I would like to see is I'd like to see us get rid of that Casio computer in the corner, which was sponsored by Wallens. It just stands there like some sort of statue to the past. I don't think it ever worked properly, and I think the big screen's a great addition. I think we could possibly do with a couple more of those.
Matthew.
Drawing up a list. Brilliant. Being recorded. I'd like to see repurposing of the park building. I talked earlier about improving our 24/7 capacity as a business. So a business model would need to be based on understanding our surrounding area, the needs of those demographics, taking into account energy efficiency, so on and so forth. We talked tonight about two things: attracting new audiences and making St James Park a welcoming space. One particularly idiosyncratic thing that I've talked about for years is within this repurposing of the building to make greater sense of the bar and the conference facilities and so on and so forth, would be a door on the St James Road side of the building. I think our curb appeal as a business outside of Matchday is very poor, and I think that's just one of those little things that needs to be addressed. But I understand all of this exists in the context of a broader ecosystem. But if I had a free hit, it would be an overhaul of the park building.
Mick, did you hear the question originally?
I didn't, but I sort of gathered what we're
Yeah,
speaking
what improvements would be like at SJP?
Yeah, well, lots really. Where do I start? Toilets needs to be improved, I think, especially that centre spot and the big bank. I'm not too sure how that could really work out, considering it would need a lot of planning to restructure what is centre spot now and the big bank toilets. But obviously, that needs to be improved. I think there should be more tables in the centre spot area, because overcrowding has become a bit of a problem in the last few seasons, I have to admit. And I think there should be more staff at the bar, say about 10 minutes before half time, in all parts of the ground really, where they serve alcohol and what have you. So all that could be a big improvement, I think, to the fans as well.
Paul?
Yeah, I think like we're all touching on, really, the centre spot completely needs reconfiguring. Just doesn't work as a bar, and it doesn't really make it a welcoming place to be. And I'm not particularly talking match day, so you can gain revenue out of it the rest of the time as well, make it a proper bar. I'm talking about different entrances. Some real big job needs to be done there, and it will recoup money over a period of time. So it's been something that's been talked about for years, but it really, really does need completely redoing. And hospitality generally, we talk about pre-filling drinks and so on and so forth, making the turnaround a lot better around the ground. There have been great improvements made, but I think there are more improvements we can make in those same areas. And there've been some great improvements. The scoreboard and stuff is, it's great to see that there. One small thing, and it's not essential, is the main stand is replacing the seats at some point, because when there's nobody sat there, it looks really strange, all the faded seats. Not a massive essential, but it would be nice to have new red seats there at some point, gleaming in that new stand.
So Clive, I suspect this definitely this one for you as well, but
Yeah. I mean, they're all interesting points, and as I chair the Supporter Experience Committee, and Richard sits on that. There's representatives of the club and trust upon that committee. It's really, I think one of our biggest challenges at the moment is our own success. So over the last few years, we've probably gone through serving 4,500 people on a Saturday, where we just about get everybody served at the bars and the kiosks, to having 6,500 in. And that difference of those 2,000 extra people to serve has really caused us huge problems with queuing. And queuing at the park is horrendous. And unfortunately, because of the layout, it's really difficult problem to solve. Obviously, for revenue wise, we want those extra 2,000 people to be getting to the kiosks, to be getting to the bars, and those are the challenges we face, and that's upon us every Saturday. So it's a really it's a real challenge to get through that. But that's what we're working on. Just upkeeping the stadium, as you say, the seats, the steelwork, the roofs, they all need constant maintenance. They soon start to rust, so keeping those painted. You've talked about the centre spot and the fan zone, as it's now called. One of the key points of that has just been ticked off, which is the signing of a new lease on the centre spot building, and the fan zone actually is included in that lease, so it's all part of one lease. And just within the last couple of months, a new lease has been signed, which enables us to actually get on and do some of that work. Again, we are Exeter City, so everything needs to be properly planned, costed, and the benefits weighed up. But clearly, we have spent money in certain areas of the ground, and I don't think anybody on the trust board or club board actually doesn't realise that the park building itself and the fan zone is kind of next on the list. And then we get demands from the academy for extra toilets and things like that. So it's a real juggling act. But I think what's key really is we're attracting a lot of new supporters to the ground. They're facing queues, which obviously doesn't show well for their supporter experience. So just tackling queues and things like that is a real work that we've got to look at, together with first impressions, which is when you walk into the centre spot building or the fan zone. So there was a question in our pre-questions about this, and I think we've all given answers, but generally the lease is there now. It's just a case of a plan, costing it, and then having the money to put it in place.
Sorry, Ian, you get to go last, I don't know.
Yeah, as pretty much everybody said, or most people have said, the park building would be nice. I know there was an idea a while back maybe to buy the park building that fell through, obviously with expenditure going somewhere else. If you are having like a free hit, that would be nice to own the park building, and then you could hire it out, conference facilities, other money earners in that kind of range. Yeah, the centre spot definitely needs redoing. As Clive said, that's probably something that's coming fairly soon, that's desperately needed. I think I said on the Q&A written, would like some sort of canopy, even if it was temporary, over Red Square, because when it rains, when the weather's not so good, nobody uses the bar outside and the centre spot gets crowded and stuffy, and that's another revenue stream to be looked at. Maybe other thing, maybe more recycling boxes, looking at going greener with I don't know, solar panels, things like that. I know there's the borehole now, which helps with the water issues. If there more could be done in that kind of direction, going more green.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Well, I've got a couple of, we're nearly at 9 o'clock. I've got a couple of what I would think of as sort of hands up or yes, no questions, which I'll ask, and then I'll draw it to an end. We've had one question, which says, how many of you read, I'll get that right in a minute. How many of you have read Trust Board Resolution 3, even though it's been withdrawn? So just a hands up thing. Thank you. And the other question was, let me just scroll down. Where are we? Do you usually attend the AGM? Because there's currently a small turnout. So that was another question that I've had. Hands up, yes or no. Thanks, folks. I guess we're going to draw it all to a close now. I'm just going to say a couple of things, just to tie it all up together, hopefully. So, firstly, thank you very much to the candidates for taking the time to come on. And also, many thanks to the members. I think I noted we peaked at about 40 members. I want to wish the candidates good luck in the election, just for themselves and also for the members still listening and watching. Voting will start the electronic voting will start at 10 o'clock tonight. You should get an email over. It goes out in batches. If you think you should have got one and you didn't get one, firstly, this sounds obvious, but check your spam. If not, please contact us. It's quite simple for us to send out a vote. Voting closes at midnight on the 10th of November. The result was declared at the Trust AGM, so another advert for that. 11 o'clock on the 12th of November before our Peterborough game at Exeter Phoenix. Detailed arrangements will go on the website in the next few days. I'd also, as some said before, and actually a question's coming about this, and I was kind of answering it in my trust secretary role. Our trust board meetings are always open to members. There's a confidential part and a public part. Anybody is always welcome, either in person, and there is also always a Zoom link. So if you want the candidate who can't be here tonight, he almost always comes. If anybody's interested, please ask us. Please come to the meetings. You can always ask questions. And that's about all for now again. So thank you very much for all taking part, and good night to you all and good luck.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good luck,
All the
everybody.
best.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks
everybody.
all.
Yep.